Scary Alvarez podcast is back and back more quickly than anyone could have thought. And we're going to talk Wisconsin Badgers national title game coming up on Saturday in hockey. Mike Hastings and his lads doing some incredible work the last couple weeks or so. And I have a special guest today, Taylor Valentine, real good hockey mind. You've probably seen his stuff, including on Bucky's fifth quarter. Really glad to have you aboard, Taylor.
I'm glad to be here. Long-time listener, first-time guest.
Well, that's good. Well, it's good to have you too. Yeah, I don't do enough hockey stuff, and just to get a little bit of backstory, I my first Wisconsin team many moons ago that I was really into was the Wisconsin men's hockey team. Long time ago, had some ties to the program as a kid for various reasons, and so that was kind of my thing. I mean, I could tell you, Paul Houck scoring a triple overtime goal against the Fighting Sioux in 1983, like that kind of level of knowledge. So it was kind of fun to beat North Dakota again after all these years. But let's get into this Wisconsin run, and then of course the national title game that's going to be played late Saturday afternoon against the Denver Pioneers. We'll get into all that stuff, but to set the scene, Taylor, and I know you and I think probably talked a little bit about this at the time through DM, but Wisconsin loses 7-1 in one of the most embarrassing athletic performances of any sport that I can remember, let alone men's hockey, in the quarterfinals of the Big Ten tournament this year at home. Just a real head scratcher of a performance. And then, of course, as you know, we'll get into this, Wisconsin had to wait and see a little bit and get a little bit of help as far as other teams winning or losing the correct way to get in the tournament. But how do the Badgers, from your perspective, how did the Badgers lock in for this incredible run after what is arguably their worst loss in several years? How'd that come about?
Well, I think it's interesting. It's well documented on Bucky's fifth quarter now that I bring up that 6-game losing streak back in January pretty often. Those were dark times. Not the easiest to bounce back from, but I can kind of contextualize that Ohio State loss in the Big Ten tournament. You look those last two series of the year, they had Michigan for 2 games and Penn State for 2 games. Those are 2 of the top teams in the country. Obviously, Michigan the other night losing late in the second overtime period against Denver. When their back was against the wall, they came out there, they split with Michigan. They manhandled Penn State in that final series of the year before the Big Ten tournament. It's not a fluke the way people talk about having a big emotional letdown. You reach that Big Ten tournament game after you've won 3 out of 4 games against 2 top 5 teams. When you start looking at that, it's really easy to see how maybe they let off the gas a little bit, not intentionally, but that's a lot of big games to play in a row when they've been fighting for their season since the end of January at the end of that 6-game skid. I think Mike Hastings did a great job of kind of rallying the team afterwards and saying, this is not us. He even spoke afterwards saying, after that many games, against high profile opponents, it's easy to let your guard down for a second, but that's not the team we are. And I think we saw that in the bounce back when they came out against Dartmouth in game 1 and won that first game that they've won in the tournament since 2010. And it's only been uphill from there.
Yeah, that's all great, and I appreciate that. That's a good perspective, and I understand. Hockey is a little different, obviously, than football or basketball. Although I think there's some similarities to basketball, but one game typically doesn't, unless it happens against High Point in March. One game doesn't flip a season, and I can only imagine Coach Hastings in that locker room after the Ohio State debacle, kind of looking at him and saying, "Okay, guys, what are we? I mean, are we the team that just lost by 6 goals to the 5th place team in the Big Ten or 6th place, whatever the Ohio State was? Or are we the team that was ranked high in the top 10 earlier in the season, sweeping teams at Michigan State, beating Michigan on the road, that kind of thing?" And I guess we have our answer. I mean, the way they've reacted has been really heartening and a real solid piece of information regarding Mike Hastings and how he controls that locker room.
Well, and I would say, be cautious to write off the fact that we've had struggles against Ohio State for years, even when we were, absolutely rolling. For some reason, that team, whenever we get on the ice with Ohio State, I don't know if it's the way they control the blue line as we're trying to enter the offensive zone, if it's their physicality. For some reason, no matter how the Badgers are playing, Ohio State always finds a way to give them trouble. And it was just it was a really sad state of affairs to have that happen in the Big Ten tournament. But, I think based on the last few years, even they understand for some reason, Ohio State has their number. There's a lot of black magic going on out here. We're capable of bouncing back from this. This is 3 years in a row we've had Ohio State in the quarterfinal, and 2 years ago we were on a heater rolling into the end of the season until we ran into the Buckeyes. Last year kind of fell on tough times toward the end, ran into them again, got taken out in the quarterfinal, and it just seems like it's going to happen year after year until something breaks the cycle. But I'm just glad to see that after those struggles keep continuing against the Buckeyes, that it didn't perpetuate the ongoing struggles in the national, in the NCAA tournament. They get there and they finally get the monkey off their back. So I think that kind of exercised a lot of the demons for them.
Yeah, I agreed, and I think obviously we might send Ohio State some flowers because we'll say they were just a notch in the way of getting here. But yeah, Steve Rawlick, the ex-Badger, has the Ohio State's coach, maybe have some devil magic there. I'm not sure how that worked out, but they do have our number. I'm not sure why that is, but anyway, let's get into some more questions. And you were following the same thing. I will, and I don't want to speak for every single podcaster or prognosticator, out there following college hockey, but there was a pretty solid consensus in almost every one of these games. Dartmouth is hot. Haven't lost in over a month. It wasn't an upset pick because they were, we were 3, they were 2, but I didn't see many people taking Wisconsin against Dartmouth. Then we go to Michigan State. Oh, this is just a bump in the road for the Spartans. This is the Badgers. What a great story. They beat Dartmouth, but no way they'd be Michigan State. Then it's Wisconsin's going to be roadkill for North Dakota. The Vegas odds were one thing. Wisconsin was such a preposterous underdog in that game, but just these cocky broadcasters. And don't get me wrong, man. I'm not saying if you pick North Dakota to beat Wisconsin, there's something wrong with you. That was a smart pick in terms of most likely, but just the way Wisconsin has been summarily written off. And I'm telling you, Taylor, you've probably seen the same things I've seen since Denver beat Michigan yesterday in double overtime. Wisconsin is a heavy underdog in the blogosphere once again to the Pioneers. Am I imagining this?
No, that seems to be the general consensus. I know, I checked on DraftKings last night. I saw, I think the Badgers were plus 135, which is not too bad as far as the Vegas odds go. But as far as the general sentiment, I think most people seem to be riding with Denver. And as a hockey writer for the Badgers, I look at it, viewing that game last night between Michigan and Denver, I didn't really have, a rooting interest in it. There's comfort in familiarity. We played Michigan 4 times, but that means they know us as well. Denver's a new puzzle. We're a new puzzle for them. I didn't necessarily see it one way or the other, but I'm curious. Had the roles been flipped and Michigan came out of that game last night, what the sentiment would be. Obviously they'd be favorites. They're the top seed in the tournament. I think part of that is that Denver's been, the cream of the crop as far as college hockey goes for the last decade or so. Their coach Claire, he's incredible. But I think people who look at that might be writing off the coaching job that Mike Hastings has done lately. That North Dakota game was excellence by Hastings. The way that he prepared for that with a week and a half off. And again, just as you said, most of the people, and it was a smart pick to take North Dakota in that game. But at the end of the day, Hastings had the guys ready to play. And, I think the chess match in the national championship game is going to be, really high level hockey between these two programs.
I agree. I think it's going to be fun. And again, I'm not, I think I meant to reach out to you last night about who do you want, Michigan or Denver? And it was, yes, no one wants to see Michigan win the basketball title and also win the hockey title because their fans are deeply insufferable. And I have no beef with Denver fans, at least not yet. But, they're just very different teams. And it's not, I don't want to say Denver's more like Wisconsin than Michigan is, but I that's the vibe I get. They're not an offensive, they may have the offensive strengths as well as, but Michigan is just kind of a high flying bunch of NHL draft picks, and Denver, I just feel like it's going to be a low scoring game tomorrow. I just feel like it's going to be not that our other games haven't been, but I just feel like this is going to be a real grinder. I'm not sure that's the worst thing for Hastings and Wisconsin.
No, and I think if you would have asked this question back at the beginning of 2026, that would have been a lot more scary for us to face because there were a lot of goaltending questions. Hauser was dealing with a lingering injury, missed some games. Pulver, he was great against Michigan State in the first half of the year, going into a series against the number one team and taking 2 wins out of that. He got another win against Michigan toward the end of the year. But in that little middle stretch, Pulver was pulled from 3 out of 4 starts. Hauser couldn't finish a game. They were having struggles, but based on, what we've been seeing the last few weeks, and especially against North Dakota the other day, Hauser looks ready. I know he's a little bit older, but he's still a freshman as far as Big Ten hockey is concerned. I had written about it earlier today in an article that got posted. He's been essentially playing in playoff games since the start of February. They were playing for their season. So that's a lot of experience, and I think he's grown up a lot in these last few months. And, I think the way that Hastings is going to plan the game, I think they're okay with a low-scoring game if it comes to it.
Yeah, and watch us be wrong, and it's some wild like 5-4 shootout. You just never know. And there's been maybe too much talked about the tired legs that Denver's going to have. I don't want to put too much into that. I know they played a period and a half of extra hockey, and I don't think that's nothing. And then with the later game, I don't think that's nothing. But these are 20, 21, 22, if you're Wisconsin, 23 and 24-year-olds. I think they're going to be okay. I just don't see that as a huge advantage for Wisconsin, who has played overtime games themselves. Yes, they had a 2-week break after the last one, but yeah, I just feel like this is going to be a super fun game. And, we talked a little bit about the opponent, but, how do you see them matching up with Denver?
Well, it's going to be interesting. Where we get our second straight old school WCHA matchup, and obviously North Dakota and Denver are playing, they're playing each other in the NCHC throughout the season. I think North Dakota's probably a little bit bigger and likes to throw their weight around a little bit more, but I don't think Denver's all that different. They're a scrappy bunch. Obviously they've been a top team for years and, came on strong toward the end of this season. They've got, a senior goaltender, I believe. If you want to correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's a senior, but he's undrafted. He's not an NHL prospect right now, and he only came in late. And it's once he came in, they just don't stop winning. He stood on his head last night. Michigan outshot him almost 2-1. It seemed. He just made play after play, and that's a new puzzle to solve. But you look at what Wisconsin's had to face, on this stretch in the NCAA tournament. Emmett Croteau from Dartmouth, he's no slouch at all. Trey Augustine, he's obviously way up on the boards as far as great goaltenders in college hockey go. And, now we got Johnny Hicks, who's another big puzzle to solve, been playing out of his mind lately. When I look at Wisconsin and Denver, they're not too dissimilar compared to a lot of the other Wisconsin opponents we've seen this year. What's interesting when you look at Wisconsin, if you look down their roster and, their production throughout the year, most teams you stack up against, they're going to blow them out of the water. They're going to have multiple 30-plus point scorers, maybe some 20-goal scorers. Wisconsin likes to spread the puck around. It can come from anywhere, any given night. And I think you kind of see that with Denver. What was it? Kent Anderson last night, the game winner, that was his second goal of the season. He's got 6 goals in his career. You never know where it can come from with either of these teams.
Yeah, again, it's not. I don't want to suggest that these teams are a mirror. I think Wisconsin actually, given the season that Denver had, and it was kind of better towards the back half, but I think Wisconsin would aspire to be as steady as Denver has been. Obviously, 2 national titles in the past 4 seasons for the Pioneers. One of the top coaches in college hockey. And I kind of likened it to someone I talked about that they're a little bit like UConn. I know UConn lost this year, but UConn has been such a dominant. They've been a long time good, but they've kind of emerged into this elite blue blood status. And Wisconsin's a little bit like North Carolina in the sense of this is a blue blood team that just hasn't been over the last 20 years, maybe as good as it has been. So I think it's a little bit of a return to form here, and I don't want to. I don't want to overstate how important a national title will be to Wisconsin because they've been riding the underdog label and all that stuff. And you think, oh, house money. I keep hearing house money, especially since it's in Vegas. It's been just a theme they keep talking about. I don't think this is house money anymore. I think this is actually a really important national title for Wisconsin to win. I don't think a single kid in that locker room or coach on that bench would feel anything but devastation if they lose this one. I don't think they're. You can maybe look back with a little bit of time and clarity in a couple weeks if they did lose this game and say that was a really successful season. Coming in second place in college hockey is a big deal. No, no one's gonna crap on that, but winning it is so important that I just think we're here now and they got to finish the job. I think that's the message in the locker room. I don't think it's so along with that, possibly some, and I know they were in the Final Four, Frozen Four against North Dakota, so it's the same kind of thing. But I feel like the pressure is going to amp up a little bit for Wisconsin for this game. I think the free and loose, it's still maybe a little less than it is for Denver, but I do think it's going to be kind of uh, we got to go out there and get this done now. This is for all the marbles, so it's going to be interesting to see how they come out. If they can come out like they did against North Dakota, I think they're going to be in great shape.
Yeah, and I think in a way that kind of favors the way that Wisconsin plays hockey. I mean, obviously it's going to be the biggest game of the year. People are going to tighten up, but they while they do run some structured offense, they like to have chaos in the neutral zone.
Yeah.
If you're going to go out there and tighten up, I think that hurts an offense that runs in structure consistently more often than anything else. So when their brand of hockey is chaos and flying around and using speed and skill, you can obviously be a little too overamped, but I think that can kind of play into what they want to do. Um, and I totally agree. I'm a little bit older now. I try to not put too much emphasis on any one game, but I look at this game. I see it as a success no matter what. I mentioned it last night online where I said something along the lines of, this sounds like loser talk, but if you look back to January 31st, the state of the season where we were and where we are now, you can't consider it anything but a success. That being said, that all feels and sounds great, but once you get into the game, that result matters. You don't take a consolation prize if you end up losing the national championship. That's going to sting the entire offseason. Once you're there, you got a job to do. Um, and it hasn't been easy. And as you mentioned earlier, you look at those top four teams in the Frozen Four once we got there. I don't know the exact odds off the top of my head. I know Wisconsin was 5-1, far
Yeah.
and away the longest shot out of all of them. But once you get to these games, throw that stuff out the window. It's matchups. These guys are going to be ready to go. And, I think the job that Coach Hastings did going into North Dakota, if we see something similar in Denver, they might come out hot and be ready to go. Again, this could all be speculation and it could be 5-0 either way at the end of the first period or 5-5 for that matter. But at the end of the day, you're putting a lot of weight behind that coach we hired a few years ago to do the job that he was hired to do. The guy made 2 Frozen Fours with Minnesota State right before he joined Wisconsin. He came here and in year 3, we're in a Frozen Four, winning a game against North Dakota, playing for a national championship. So, I think he's going to have the guys ready to go on Saturday.
I think so too. And with that in mind, and obviously, Hastings has some coaching experience against Denver in the Frozen Four. So hopefully this goes a little better. But the keys to the game, and obviously I wanted this one must be a quick hitter. This is not going to be one of those 2 hour long ones. We'll get out here pretty quick, get you to your Friday night. But what do you see as the 2 to 3 keys to the game for the Badgers?
If number one for me is building on what they did Thursday. North Dakota, they are a strong offensive team. They're averaging just under 4 goals a game. I think they were the 3rd ranked offense going in, 7th ranked power play. 0 for 5 on the power play. The only goal they found was, in the last minute after having a couple minutes with the empty net as they were attacking. The key to the game for Wisconsin is standing guys up with the blue line, winning puck battles in the neutral zone. That was how they started getting pressure on North Dakota early and how they got out to a 2-0 lead. That's huge. The penalty kill hasn't been a strong suit for Wisconsin throughout the season. You wouldn't know it once you watched hockey yesterday. Killing 5 power plays, including, nearly a full 2 minutes of 5-on-3. those things rally the boys. Once you get a kill, that's momentum. If they can come out playing just as tenacious as they are on defense, getting after pucks in the forecheck, I think that changes the game for them. That don't sit back and wait for Denver to, gain the zone and see what you can do there. Don't sit back and, see what they have. Go get after them first.
Yeah, I love all that. And another thing, one of the reasons Wisconsin was so successful, especially on the penalty kill against, I almost call them the Fighting Sioux, against North Dakota, um, giving my age here, was getting in between the puck and the goalie. I mean, so many block shots. And, Hauser had, I believe, 21 saves, allowed one goal. 22 shots on goal has to be one of the season lows for North Dakota, but they took about 40 shots. So, it wasn't like they didn't get the shots off. Wisconsin just found a way to get in between that stick and the goal, and they got to keep doing that against Denver too. I mean, just we saw there was an injury on one of them. I think it might have got hit in the man parts. Dexheimer. If I remember correctly, it was a puck that hit him there too. It wasn't a stick, but it just underscores how these guys are absolutely putting themselves on the line every single shift, every single moment to gain a small advantage wherever possible. And that's one of the things that doesn't stick out in the stat sheet as much as some other things, but I just think that it's indicative of the effort they've been giving. So
yeah,
we shall see.
Well, and really, I mean, you look at the second half of the season, they lost Logan Hensler. That's a first-round draft pick. They lost Zach Schultz. I know that they're kind of waiting to see. Maybe he returns. He wasn't ready to go the other day, not in the lineup. Those are two big-time defensemen that they've lost. So there's been a lot of, makeup work they've had to do. And I think, you can look at the captain, Ben Dexheimer, to be the guy who rallies everyone around that 5-on-3. Yeah, I don't know if it was the man parts. I thought based on, I was watching it on the phone because I was out coaching a baseball game, but I thought he got hit in the boot. Either way, he hobbled off the ice right after, and that was the big 5-on-3 kill. I think a lot of this comes down to scouting and game planning, which is what I'm excited to see what Hastings can do now, with this day off in between playing Denver. They got on, whatever shooting side it was for Denver really well. They took away the angles. They're firing pucks. They're not getting on net because they can't get a good look because the defense was sitting right on their strong side. And I don't know if we might have had a better game plan for Michigan since we've seen it 4 times. I would think that Michigan is smart enough that had they made it, they would change some things up, knowing that we know each other so well. But I think that's one of the cool things about playing Denver is, this is a fresh matchup. And there's a lot that Hastings can do to, I'm sure he's watched a whole lot more Denver throughout the season than any of us, just in case this might be the moment that they, meet on Saturday afternoon. But if he can do something like he did with North Dakota, I think the game plan could be key to what happens at 4:30 on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and certainly not without reason. But the media is certainly building Carl up to be like a Danny Hurley, a genius coach. Yeah, he's real good, and by all accounts, maybe in a way that Hurley isn't a good dude too, and really well respected and liked by his colleagues. So it's not we're not going to go in there probably and do a lot about coaching him, but I think if Hastings is who I think he is, he'll have his guys ready to go, and we'll see. I mean, it's a game with 2 really good teams, a couple hot goalies. Anything could happen. No result would surprise. I mean, obviously, if one team blew the other out, that would surprise me. But Denver winning would not surprise me. Wisconsin winning would not surprise me. Now, back it up a couple weeks before the tournament started, and someone, if we're being fully honest, said Wisconsin's going to make a run and win the national title. I might have tilted my head a little bit. Not that I thought they couldn't do it, but I just feel like you have to know, kind of for the reasons we talked about with the Ohio State game. There was just a lot of mystery, and it's been really fun to see how they've responded in this run. And however things go on Saturday, this team has a tremendous amount to be proud of. They've given their fans a lot of joy in the context of a season where they didn't get very much joy from the basketball team in March. But let's hear your prediction. You knew I was going to come to you for this, and we'll get you underway tonight.
Well, so there was a long-standing thing that was brought up during the Denver and Michigan game last night, especially when they went to overtime, tied 3-3, is that Johnny Hicks hasn't given up 4 goals all year since he's been the starter. Um, so my prediction, I usually avoid the homer picks. My bracket be damned. Don't look at how far I have Wisconsin going any given year. I always drink some of the Kool-Aid. But I think a way to, put the closing chapter on this season, Wisconsin gets that 4th goal against Johnny Hicks. Badgers walk away with a third period goal to take it away 4-3.
Oh man, I love that. I love that. You didn't take my score. My score is going to be 3-2 Wisconsin. Um, Maybe I'm just buying in to the feeling this is a team of destiny, and I know from past experiences, one that sticks out, although it's a very different way of getting there, was the 2014-15 Wisconsin men's basketball team, which I was just sure they were going to win that title when they were playing Duke. I don't feel that same level of certainty, and these are very different teams, and Wisconsin is so much more of an underdog here. But just something about this squad that I'm not going to sit here on Friday evening and pick against them. I just won't do
No,
it.
I'm very uncertain about everything with this team, but I can only go on what I've seen over the last 2 weeks. And, this is a team that is completely unselfish. The goals can come from anywhere. We have a top offensive player on our team in Quinn Finley, who he might go quiet for a few weeks at a time while everyone else picks up the slack, but he's ready to go any given moment. Uh, it's hard to pick against a team that you see where everyone is contributing and the sum is greater than its parts. So I struggle to use the word team of destiny. That would probably involve a whole lot of different things going right for them throughout the year to this point. But I mean, this team's on a heater, and they're playing for the city of Madison. They're playing for the crest on the chest, and they're playing for each other.
I agree, and I just it could just be selfish, but it could be being a longtime Wisconsin hockey fan. But it would just feel so good to win this one. It just I don't know if field's probably not quite the right term, but in a season, you mentioned the 6 game losing streak in the Big Ten, the back half of the season, the blowout to Ohio State in the quarterfinals of the Big Ten tournament. It's just such an unlikely backdoor, almost like the '81 title in some ways, where that team snuck in and just found the right mindset in that NCAA tournament to win the games they needed to win, and ended up, some say, stealing the title in '81. This
Yeah,
feels like
I
that
mean,
kind of team.
I think it's not too dissimilar to the analogy you just made about that 2014-15 basketball team. They were in the Final Four the year before that, and that was the year that still stings me the most. Watching Harrison, I don't even
Yeah.
want to talk about it anymore. But that was one that I thought, had they gotten past that game, they beat a one-man show with Napier at UConn in the title game. But we knew it was coming the year afterwards. It kind of seemed like they were a year early. They were still going to be back. And that's kind of what this feels like right now. So might as well finish the job while we're here. But, this kind of feels like found goods. It feels like there's still a lot of great stuff to come from Wisconsin men's hockey in the years going forward. So I think that's part of the reason people talk about, being in Vegas with house money right now. It feels like we're early, but just because you're early doesn't mean you can't win it all. We're already in the title game. Why not do
Yeah,
it
I don't
while
know.
you're there?
Yeah, I don't know who the Aaron Harrison analogy would be on Denver, but a little bit tougher. Yeah, and I love Gasser. He's one of my all-time favorite Badgers. So I'm not trying to give him a hard time here, but he probably, in his heart of hearts, thinks he could have been a little step closer on that three-pointer. But you know what? Maybe then the 2014-15 team stumbles somewhere and doesn't make. You just never know with sports. So anyway, Taylor, thanks so much for jumping on. We're both in agreement. Bucky's going to take it home, get the Badgers their next title. Title number 7, I believe. So and
7.
put us two ahead of Minnesota, which is always fun. But I'm
Well,
Wisconsin, and I'm super excited. Any final words?
I'll say if you want one more prediction from me,
Yeah,
my favorite player for the last 2 years, he's getting a goal tomorrow, and that's Simon Tassi. Simon Tassi likes to get in there and muck it up. He finds a way. He's been huge in the second half of this season, especially late. I mean, he got the first goal yesterday. Look for Tassi to score on Saturday. If he does, Badgers might roll.
they're in good shape. He is the Mike Hastings system if it were one player. I just think that's perfect. But anyway, thanks for jumping on and on Wisconsin. Let's make it a great day for hockey.
Absolutely. Let's go enjoy tomorrow.